Today we're going to take a look at a build of Zimone and Dina. This is a new Sultai commander from March of the Machines. It takes two commanders, which were previously Zimone and Dina, and they're fighting together in the war. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. And then you can tap, sacrifice another creature, draw a card. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. If you control 8 or more lands, you repeat this process. So this deck is all about trying to make sure you draw 2 cards a turn. That way you can have your opponents lose 2 life, you gain 2 life. And then there's a couple combos that synergize around life loss from your opponents that will then win you the game. So let's take a look at some of the way we have the deck built. We have 12 creatures. We have a Spectral Sailor that we can flash in, which is good for us as a blocker. We can flash it in on end step and then turn around on our turn and attack with it. But it also has an ability for a blue and 3 generic, or 4 mana total, that we can draw a card as many times as we want. So we draw a card for turn, pay the 4 mana, draw our second card, trigger our commander. We are running the original Dina, Soul Steeper. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. So this could go well with our commander. We can pay 1, sacrifice another creature. Dina gets plus X plus O till end of turn, where X is the sacrifice creature's power. Fairy Mastermind has flash, so we can flash it in on our end step and then attack with it on our turn. But whenever an opponent draws their second card each turn, you draw a card. And we can pay 4 mana, and each player draws a card. Wily Illusionist is a nice addition to us. Whenever we draw our second card, we're going to create a 1/1 illusion creature token that gets +1 + O for each other illusion that we have. And whenever an illusion that we control dies, you may put a permanent card with mana value less than or equal to that creature's power on the battlefield. That part's not relevant, but we're going to be trying to draw a second card a lot, so being able to make some creatures from it is helpful. We have Veto, Thorn of the Dusk Rose. Whenever we gain life, target opponent loses that much life. There's a combo that pairs well with Veto to be an infinite life lost and draining our opponents down. That way we can close it out. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Alondra Sky Dreamer. For 2 blue and 2 generic, whenever you draw your second card each turn, you create a 2/2 blue Drake creature token with fly. Whenever you draw your 5th card, Alondra Sky Dreamer and Drakes you control get +X, where X is the number of cards. We're probably not drawing 5 cards a turn, but again, drawing 2, making a 2/2 is helpful. Murmuring Mystic is here not for the card draw factor, but because we're going to be casting a lot of spells to help us get to that second draw. This gives us creatures on the field for doing that. Shieldred is a nice way to drain the table a little bit. Whenever we draw a card, we gain 2 life. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life. We're going to be targeted hardcore by our opponents, and this life gain is going to become really relevant very fast. Talrand is here for the same reason as Murmuring Mystic, to give us blockers, but attackers too, because drawing a card is nice, but if our commander dies a lot, then we need to be able to function still, and so we need a way to kill people with creatures. Dika Fractal Theorist has Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery, you create a 0/0 blue fractal creature token, and you put +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the mana value. This is again here for the same reason as Talrand and Murmuring Mystic. Psychosis Crawler is a iffy card. It seems good at face value. It's probably the next card that we cut when we find another card that we like for this deck. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of cards in our hand, and when we draw a card, each opponent loses 1 life. Consecrated Sphinx is here because it naturally gives us 2 card draws from our opponents. By letting them draw their cards naturally, we draw 2. Trigger our commander. We run 8 sorceries, most of which are all about either tutoring or drawing cards. So we run Ponder, Preordain, Charter Course. We then run, of course, a suite of tutors like Demonic Tutor and Grim Tutor. And then you'll see things like Secrets of the Golden City that you don't see very often, but it draws you 2 cards. Triumph of the Hordes is here because if I'm playing green, I'm going to play this card. It's one way to either knock out an opponent or potentially knock out multiple opponents or all of your opponents, depending on how many creatures you have and where they are with life totals and how much infect you can get on them. Instances, we run a suite of counter spells, but we also run, of course, ways of helping us draw cards. So we think like Brainstorm, Consider, Opt, Peek. These are all cards that help us draw cards that we can do at instant speed, so we can maybe have our opponents play something, We draw a card from them doing that, and then we draw a second card by casting one of our instant speed draw spells, which is very important. We want to be able to draw cards and trigger our commander as much as possible and gain as much card advantage and board presence as possible. So you will notice lots of ways of doing that. And then of course we run removal like Reality Shift, Resculpt, Beast Within, because at some point we do need to be able to hopefully take care of big threats that are on the field. But at the same time, if we're getting in a good position where we're making lots of creatures with our Talrand, we need to be able to start attacking and closing it out, and that helps us do that. We run 10 artifacts. We run things like Skull Clamp, which we can clamp one of our creatures and then hopefully it dies and we draw a card. We are running things like Mind Stone and Commander Sphere and Letter of Acceptance that we can sacrifice to draw cards. And then we're running Strixhaven Stadium. It doesn't do anything for card draw, but if we are starting to get to a good point with creatures where we are attacking, these point counters that we're putting on Strixhaven Stadium could become really relevant, and it might even be a way of taking on an opponent, because when we have 10 or more point counters on it, we do damage to a player from combat, we remove those counters and they lose the game. We run 3 enchantments. We run Rhystic Study, of course, and then we run Exquisite Blood and Sanguine Bond, which those two together are infinite when we are able to gain some life. They also pair well with Veto, which is why we run Veto as a backup, because if we lose one of them, then we have a backup. It also goes well with Dina. This is one way that we can infinitely close it out. We might tutor for both of those pieces, or we might tutor for one of them if we already have one on the field, but that is one infinite in the deck that allows us to drain our opponents. When they lose life, we gain that much life, and then Sanguine Bond type of effect. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses life, so that back and forth will kill the table. We run 34 lands. We run, of course, Beseiji, which is here as a piece of removal, or it's a land, depending on what we need it to be. And the same thing for Otawara. It's a land or piece of removal, depending on where we need it to be. We do run Reliquary Tower to give us no maximum hand size so that we can hopefully have a good grip of cards. And then we're running the Campus lands, Quandrix Campus and Witherbloom Campus, so that we can scry manipulate our deck. They do come in tap, which is a little bit of a downside, but this is also at one point was a Strixhaven themed deck, so we put those two in there to fit the theme at the same time. They will likely be switched out for other lands at some point in time. If you have experience playing Zimone and Dina and there are other cards you would recommend that have synergized well, please let us know in the comments below. Or if you have played against it, or you have it and you would love to share how it's gone for you, share those things with us. We love to hear how decks have functioned for other people, and we love to hear suggestions for things that we didn't think to include.